Welcome, everybody. So the last episode we were in Austin. We're coming back to the UK now. I have the Chief Marketing Officer, Steve Tongish, for IQGeo, and Cambridge-based company on for this episode. So we're covering everything in the industry. The previous one was about Earth observation. Now we're going down subsurface. We have a company specializing in network data sets. So Steve, welcome. Thanks for coming on. And without further ado, please could you give us the elevator pitch for IQGeo?
Well, thanks very much, Will. Thank you for having us on. I am based in Cambridge, but I'm originally from Denver, so you've got a little bit of cross-pollination going on here. So what does IQGeo do? IQGeo is a very specialized software company. We do software only, and we write software to help telecommunication and utility network operators plan, design, construct, and operate their networks. We focus on their physical networks and helping them locate and manage and maintain those networks.
That was a very succinct elevator pitch. I think you're breaking the record for the one that could actually happen in an elevator ride.
As long as it's clear.
Sure. Okay, so I think you've already actually begun to address the next question, which is what niche do you dominate? So you basically talked about software for physical networks, the design, the administration, the maintenance of them. So perhaps then to what degree are you dominating that niche?
Well, it's a complicated ecosystem. As you can imagine, there are a lot of different players. There's a massive amount of hardware and software. And so we fit within that ecosystem. And what's interesting for us as a business is that it's a very buoyant industry at the moment, those industries, because of course the deployment of fiber networks is very important, and there's a lot of it happening, both private and public funding, because getting high performance broadband to people is very important, people and businesses. And then on the electric utility side, there's so much going on with the redesign of the grid to support distributed energy generation, electric vehicles, solar power, wind power, renewable energy. So it really requires a real rethink of the grid assets. And so it's a very interesting market to be in right now because there's a lot going on. There's investment being made, and there are markets that are making a difference to people's lives as well. Having proper broadband communications does improve people's lives. And also, redeveloping that energy network is really important to things like, carbon neutral objectives, net zero objectives that all of us have, including IQGeo as a company. And so we're making a lot of headway in that space because traditionally a lot of our competitors had very, I would say, legacy-based large database approaches to managing these. And you can imagine these networks now are very distributed and much more complex, and they need a much more agile solution to approach these more distributed network environments.
It almost, that phrase, selling picks and shovels in a gold rush. It seems like you have software, you have the shovels that will apply to anybody who's trying to pan for gold or dig for gold. And it's not just one kind of network. It's fiber, it's the power lines. It almost seems like the world is undergoing a huge shift. There's a massive new infrastructure build out just for fiber across the Western world. I think in the UK, I heard it's one of the largest ever engineering projects to push fiber to the premises for the population here.
Well, if you think of these networks, they are kind of in a general sense a big machine, and they are everywhere. Maybe you've seen the analogies of these certain kinds of trees or even mushrooms that spread their tentacles for miles and miles and miles, many square miles. And so you don't see it; it's under the surface, but it's integral to the whole life cycle. So it is an exciting time. Hopefully, we think that this will continue to go for quite some time. There is a lot of work still to be done. Plus, once these systems are in place, they have to continue to be maintained and operated. And so our strategy is not to help solely with the planning and construction of those networks, but with the ongoing life cycle of the networks, the ongoing operation. So that's very important to us, and making sure that we deliver a solution that works across that entire integrated life cycle.
Okay, so it's not just once and done. You're making sure you hang on to your customers after they've, for example, used the software to design the network and construct it. You're there for the maintenance period as well.
And for the future and the things we haven't foreseen. What are the other changes? We're certain that these networks won't be static, but I can't predict what's coming next.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I guess approaching IQGeo from a slightly different angle now, more on the investor side. So how much skin in the game do owners and managers of IQGeo have?
Well, we are a publicly traded company. We are a listed PLC on the London Stock Exchange, the AIM. And so all of our information about who owns what is all public. Certainly our management team and our board and investors do have a stake in the business. And from a performance point of view over the last year, our share price has done very well. I think that's a reflection of our business. We set out our goals. Again, these are all public, our targets and our forecasts. And we have, touch wood, been achieving those forecasts. And so our overall performance and the response from the market has continued to be quite positive.
Yeah, that was actually something that stood out to me when I began this project last year of setting up this global geospatial index. I noticed that IQGeo was the only stock that was going up, really, whilst the rest of the industry was going down. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
I think it's a reflection of two things, probably. I do think we have very good technology, and we're taking a slightly different approach to our competition, which we may touch on later. But again, it's also a reflection of the market, and I think we're in the right place right now with the technology that we have.
Sure. Okay, which brings us nicely to the next question. So how are you working backwards from customer needs?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we're not a big company. We're growing quickly, but we're not tens of thousands of people. And so what I think has made us very successful thus far is our focus on customers, and what will be a challenge for IQGeo going forward is to keep that focus as we grow. And it's something I was just talking to the team about yesterday, actually. And I mentioned to you that before this call, I was working on a proposal where we're reaching out to some of our customers and actually asking them to help us understand their perspective and tell us, where their pain points, where their challenges, where their opportunities. On the broadband side, there are tremendous opportunities, and to make sure that we continue to understand what our customers and the industry wants to hear and needs to hear. Of course, it's complicated, right? Because every business is a little bit different, and some have one priority, a slightly different priority than another. But there are these universal challenges, and so I think as an organization, we have a lot of people who have been through and been involved in very large companies, and we appreciate that we don't want to make the mistake of losing that connection with our customer as we grow. And we want to stay focused on that.
Yeah, I think you're continuing the theme, really, from the last interview with Sky-Fi, where you're making the brave move of putting yourself squarely in front of the customers and listening to positive and negative feedback. I guess it takes a bit of courage, but it's the fastest way to understand what you need to do next.
Well, and you do your best, and you don't always get it right. And so anytime you're working with customers, it's always a partnership. And so you do your very best to make sure that they get what they need.
Okay, so one way we can measure if you are giving them what they need is the rate of customer growth. So have you got any comments on that?
What we have are actually a mix of smaller customers and larger customers. So we had some very big wins in 2022. And then we have kind of two product lines on the broadband side. On the fiber side, we have a more shrink wrapped product that is ideal for smaller network operators. And then we have an enterprise product that enables much more customization and integration for the big guys. And so we have kind of a parallel track from a sales point of view where there's greater frequency of the smaller customers that are joining us because it's a shorter sales cycle, it's a lower investment. And then we have these fewer but significant from a revenue point of view, larger customers who are making big enterprise investments with us.
Yeah, I remember last year, I mean, I confess to belonging to a few of those stock forums. There's one in the UK, I think it's called ADVFN, and there was an announcement of some major US utility network, but
Yeah.
the initial announcement didn't say what it was, and there was endless debate. I think eventually you said it was AT&T, and I feel like this is such a huge customer. And I think you've also announced another large top 5 US utility operator too. So it seems like IQGeo is entering into another league.
There is some really nice momentum with some big customers. And again, being a publicly held company, we have to be very careful about how we communicate information. And when we make those announcements, what's interesting, yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, is that those announcements usually come out on something called an RNS Reach, which is a supplementary news feed for the regulatory news on the London Stock Exchange. Those announcements are within our forecasted projections. So it's important for investors to understand that those aren't exceptional announcements. Those aren't beyond our forecast. Those are announcements that say, yes, we've achieved this, and that's within our stated and published forecasts. And so it's just a way of kind of keeping people informed about the fact that we're making progress and that there are significant new customers.
Okay, so speaking of leagues and scale, we have to talk about ESRI Utility Network, a competitor. So what makes you better than them?
Better. I'm not sure I'd position it quite like that. Well, ESRI, of course, is a very respectable, responsible, big competitor in the industry. They've been around for many, many years. We see them primarily in the utility space, as you said, EUN. So in the electric utility space, we see them less in the fiber space, although there are organizations out there. Typically, ESRI has their foundation product, and then on top of that, third-party vendors build solutions. And sometimes those solutions are fairly comprehensive, and sometimes they're point solutions. What makes us different from ESRI is that we're a single provider. We can support the entire network. We are also, we don't start from a GIS route. We start from a telecommunication, a fiber operator route, or a electric utility route. And so what we think is different about what we do is that our network models are completely optimized. So we're not taking a generic GIS environment and putting an electric utility model on top of it. We are building a native electric utility model. And for a whole lot of reasons, from a flexibility point of view, we can very easily change those models. We're highly adaptable. And from a scalability point of view, and from an operational point of view, and even from a technical debt point of view, you're not dealing with multiple vendors and trying to synchronize things together. There's one source that has an optimized model. And so we feel that we provide a very credible and efficient alternative. Also, ESRI is in the process right now of doing a lot of upgrades to EUN. And the feedback we've gotten there is that can be a very time-consuming, costly process. So we think it's a great opportunity for people to consider a possible alternative to that.
Sure, yeah. I think it would be good briefly to touch on costs. So are we talking an order of magnitude difference between the costs for an IQGeo solution for an equivalent scale network versus EUN or
I
other?
mean, yeah, I mean, obviously it depends very much on the size of the customer and what they're doing and what they're integrating. But yes, it can be very significant. It can be many millions of dollars difference, not to mention the ongoing cost. So we have seen customers and spoken to people who are talking about multi-year projects with tens of millions of dollars and for an ESRI EUN environment, and so that's a significant investment, right? And it's worth considering what else is out there, and what other approaches are there to managing these really dynamically changing networks. As we said in the beginning, the electric utility networks are going through a major change, once in a lifetime change, and looking at the tools that you have and making sure you've got the right tools for that process and for supporting it going forward is really critical to them.
Okay, so this is a real moment for IQGeo to try and participate in as many of those conversations as possible during those transitions.
We think so. We hope so.
Okay, so I'm aware that you've recently acquired ComSoft. What challenges and opportunities have arisen as a result?
To be honest, it's mostly opportunities. The ComSoft team provides automated fiber planning, and they also do some automated planning tools for things like district heating, and we're working with them on some electrical planning capabilities as well. So the great thing about the ComSoft acquisition was that it fit perfectly into our lifecycle strategy. So we talked about the fact that it's plan, design, construct, operate, and they fit in that planning and design phase really nicely. And it allows us to tell a very strong story about supporting that entire life cycle. And so we've been going through the process right now. And from a marketing point of view, it's been a really interesting exercise because we've been going through the process of talking to both the traditional IQGeo customers and saying, hey, now you have this opportunity to expand the life cycle with planning, and talking to the ComSoft customers and going, remember when you asked us the question, okay, I have my plan, what do I do now? We can help you with that phase. We can move those plans on to construction and into operations. So it's been really a fantastic fit, and the response from both the industry and our customers has been very positive.
I guess another word that investors like to hear is vertical integration. It seems, maybe I think I recall reading that you used to have some sort of a license agreement with ComSoft or other firms to cover the full life cycle, but this is an instance where you've brought this into the business, so you're no longer suffering the middleman fees, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it one of the things about our platform, though, is we are a very open platform. We're an open source, open platform, and so there's not a lot of proprietary requirements there. And certainly, since we've acquired ComSoft, when we talk to customers, we will talk to them about the ComSoft Fiber Automated Planning solution. But if a customer comes to us and says they'd rather use another one, then we're happy to integrate that as well. So we are going to remain open. I mean, naturally, no one would be surprised that we have a preference for the ComSoft Fiber solution, but we're not gonna mandate that or require it. People choose solutions for a whole lot of reasons, and that's perfectly fine if they want to use an alternative.
Yeah, sure. I guess that's important for maybe potential customers to hear, that they won't be locked in somehow. Okay, so continuing the acquisition theme, seems there's a pattern of them in your niche. For example, Hexagon acquiring Intergraph. So should investors think about this possibility for IQGeo?
Oh, that's kind of above my pay grade, Will. And as a publicly traded company, I mean, I wouldn't be in any position to comment on that. We're focused on our business and what we're doing and our growth. we are growing, and that's a huge challenge. And we're trying to make sure that, like we talked about earlier, that we really stay focused on our customer and our customer needs. And we believe that these industries, like the broadband fiber industry and like the electric utility industry, they really require industry expertise. And we have had people come to us and say, well, why don't you use your technology for doing transport networks or other kinds of, well, in theory you could, but we don't have the expertise in those networks. Might we in the future? Maybe, I don't know, but we wouldn't do it without really understanding those environments. And I think that's really where we're staying focused.
Yeah, I feel like our industry is so big, and some of the GIS software packages are so general. Maybe what IQGeo shows is that just for network data sets, you're showing that it's possible to stand up and sustain a whole business just for this one small sub-discipline of the broader geospatial, I guess, space. So.
I think that is really important. And having a broad, there's nothing wrong with having a broad GIS platform. That's great. It's just not the approach we've chosen, right? We're geospatial experts, but we're really focused on those vertical industries because we feel they are so complex that they require real industry expertise. And that's one of the reasons why we believe we're successful, is because we're not coming in and saying, you can use this general GIS and try and put something on top. We're saying we're building that from the ground up for a fiber network or for electric utility network.
You're showing that I'm how GIS centric I am. The only way I was able to describe you was in terms of a network data set, but actually the message is that you are fiber optic network, utility, so water, power network centric. You are those types of businesses first, and then you use geospatial software.
Yeah, I think you're right, Will. I think that's a better way to describe it for us. And we talk about network models, right? A fiber network model or an electric network model, and it's just really important for us that we have a really flexible, adaptable model. So if people want to model on the fiber side, if they want to model a transmission tower, fine, model a transmission tower. On the electrical side, if you need to model a complex distributed energy environment, great, we can do that. But it's understanding what lays behind those networks and the connectivity of those networks. That connectivity has to be there, right? You can't just have a fiber that you say, okay, that's a fiber and a conduit. It has to be connected to something, and all those fibers have to be connected, and they have to be connected to the house, and that physical infrastructure is really complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some contact, I can say, with utility network modeling. Probably the last one was at Ashgal in Qatar, where I was in the drainage network operations and maintenance team. And where your eyes sort of light up in this sort of area is upstream, downstream traces on the network, and you don't have any topology errors. And then you can do all sorts of amazing analysis. Because I was there during COVID, and a way to, I guess, detect COVID outbreaks is to sample sewage.
Water, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can do an upstream trace to the community or the set of households that might be infected.
Yeah.
And so there's great power once you have a proper network model.
Well, and where we kind of where we cut our teeth originally was in mobility. And for precisely that reason, Will, was giving people the tools in the field on tablets and phones to have a network model that isn't just schematic. It is intelligent, and so they can do things like upstream traces. So you've got a broken fiber cable somewhere. How can I trace that back? So in the field, they can do that. And so making sure that that information is available to everyone is really critical. Yeah, so it's and with that in mind, that's why we think, well, we're not heading to any other industries anytime soon, because first of all, as we talked about, these are really these are industries where there's a lot happening, and we think we need that expertise and talent to be able to be customer focused and to give customers what they need.
Great. Well, maybe I think that's a good place to leave it. A nice succinct overview of IQGeo's offerings. And I think, there's a huge amount of investment just across the Western world to catch up with, the likes of South Korea, to have high-speed fiber for the entire population. So it's really good to have gotten in touch with a company participating in that. So thanks very much, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Will. It's been a pleasure.